And now I'm delighted to be able to present to you Congresswoman Judy Chu, who has come here to keynote our afternoon. And we're so glad that the Congresswoman could take time. She represents currently the 32nd Congressional District. We hope that she's going to be in the newly redistricted 27th represent us here. We have some of her biography information in the program. I would just like to say that we've had nothing but positive and wonderful encounters with Congresswoman Judy Chu. She has been here when we were fighting the fight to keep the Mac Robinson Postal Distribution Facility, and she already, before we even knew this issue was something we were going to do with the Citizens United issue, she already had co-sponsored House Joint Resolution 90, which we've been trying to get Congressman Schiff to do for a long time. We are so glad to have her here today.
Good afternoon and congratulations on the 1-year anniversary of Occupy Democracy Pasadena. It seems like just yesterday when the Occupy movement started and was an inspiration to so many of us because it was the voice of the everyday citizens saying, we've got to do something about Wall Street. And it was incredibly powerful to see people giving up days of their lives, being out there in the streets just to make a difference. The Occupy movement gave a voice to the frustrations of thousands of out-of-work Americans and struggling students. And I'm so glad because you haven't stopped since then. And we need you to keep on going because we need everyday Americans to participate in our democracy and to stand up for what they believe more than ever now. You stood up for the 99%. You stood up for democracy. You stood up for building coalitions so that we have a true participation in our government. Well, it is that spirit that I embrace and that spirit that got me to become a Congress member in Washington, D.C. It only occurred because of a momentous announcement that President Obama made over 3 years ago, nominating Hilda Solis to be his Secretary of Labor. It opened up the congressional seat, and I decided to run. But it was a very tough primary, and there were naysayers that said that someone like me could not win the seat. But I thought I had a chance, and the reason that I thought I had a chance were years working in the grassroots, building up ties as a coalition builder. And in 2009, I did win. What was even more amazing was the next day when President Obama called me from the White House congratulating me on becoming the first Chinese American woman ever elected to Congress in history. Now, I have to say, I never thought that I would ever become an elected official while growing up. I was just an ordinary student, an ordinary citizen, when there was an issue that arose. And it was that issue that drove me to get involved in my city. It was when there was an anti-immigrant English-only movement in the city of Monterey Park, and there was a backlash against them. There were long-time established residents that wanted only English on the signs in the city and only English books in the library. The last straw was when they passed a resolution saying that only English should be spoken in the city. Naturally, people had to come together to fight it. So a coalition of people came together to fight it, and we got thousands of signatures on petitions. It was enough pressure to get one city council member to overturn his vote, and it overturned the resolution. Out of that, I ran for the city council and won, served as mayor, then went to the state assembly, then to the Board of Equalization, and then to Congress. But at every juncture of my elected life, I've seen the corrupting power of money. It was while on the Monterey Park City Council that we fought the big billboard industry. You see, a big billboard company came into the city. They wanted to build billboards along the freeway surrounding Monterey Park. Since Monterey Park is surrounded by 3 freeways, their eyes glistened with joy because they thought, they actually proposed 30 billboards to be up along the city boundaries. So they set about their business plan a year ahead of the unveiling of their proposal. They went to all the nonprofits in the city and became the biggest donors. They went to each city council member and asked them what their favorite causes were and gave them big bucks. And so they then unveiled their proposal. They got 4 out of the 5 to actually vote yes to put those billboards up. And the community was outraged. But by that time, the billboard company had done its job with its money, and there was little that we could do on the city council level. So the one city council member that did not go for it and the rest of the community got together. And we gathered signatures for an initiative to ban billboards from Monterey Park. But let me tell you, we had no money for a campaign, none whatsoever. All we had were people. We had seniors, we had students, we had volunteer community activists who said, we can do it. We went to the supermarkets and gathered signatures. The billboard company had so much money, they did a media campaign to tell people not to sign, and even sent goons to the supermarkets so that we would all get thrown off the site. But we persevered. We did get enough signatures to place this on the ballot, and wouldn't you know it, we won with 83% of the vote. That is why you don't see billboards in Monterey Park. Then, it was while I was in the state assembly that we fought agribusiness. One day I was told a shocking story. It was about the death of Mr. Asuncion Valdivia, a farm worker. He was picking grapes for 10 hours straight in 105-degree temperatures when he fell over unconscious. Instead of calling an ambulance, GMR Vineyards told his son to drive Mr. Valdivia home. On the way home, the father started foaming at the mouth and died of a heat stroke. A son had to witness his father die of a preventable heat stroke at the age of 53. For 15 years, farm workers have been trying to get protections from Cal OSHA for heat-related illnesses. But the big corporations, the agribusinesses, always prevailed. They did not want to be bothered. And their requests were rebuffed. And so the United Farm Workers said, enough is enough. They asked me to sponsor a bill, and of course I had to, and it was a bill that said that there had to be common sense protections in heat-related conditions during work. Water, shade, rest periods. But agribusiness had a lot of money, and the farm workers had virtually no money. At one point, the bill was stuck, and we thought the governor would not sign this bill because of the money of agribusiness. And so we decided to pull something. We decided that we were going to go to Delano and have a meeting in the sun, right in the middle of a field, where it was 105 degrees, and we did it for 2 hours with the press, the farm workers, and the governor's office. I tell you, I thought I was going to faint because it was so hot, but nonetheless, we all survived. And do you think they got the message? Yes, and they signed the bill after that. Well, today, I am in Congress, and there was another threat to our democratic system. It was the proposed closure of the Mac Robinson mail processing facility. And I think that what we see is a very terrible trend. The reason we are so stuck on this, despite the fact that there's $5.5 billion worth of wasted money going to a pension system that no other industry has to do. The thing is that there is a move to privatize all mailing systems and hence fill the coffers of corporations. Well, closing these facilities in particular will delay San Gabriel's mail delivery, harm our economy, displace 210 loyal workers, and worse yet, threaten our election system in a state where we are relying more and more on vote by mail. In fact, can you imagine? The post office is heading towards a 3-day delivery. And when you think about our election system, where we depend on it to get those ballots in on time, that is a true threat. Well, I certainly wasn't going to stand idly by. And so we did everything we could with Congressmember Schiff and Napolitano. We spoke at hearings. We had calls with the postmaster confronting him about the closure. We held a press conference with community members. And here's where I want to really commend Occupy Democracy Pasadena, because you were such a prominent part of the coalition effort, joining together with the post office, the letter carriers, the unions, the NAACP. And I tell you, one of the unforgettable inspirational sights I had during this whole process was that press conference with everybody coming together as one united, loud voice saying, we do not want this mail delivery site closed. And even though it is a tough fight, I tell you, it was clear that Southern California heard our protests. So thank you for that. So does coming together as a coalition make a difference? The answer is an unqualified yes. And that's why I'm so impressed with the Occupy movement. It is truly coalition building at its core, brings so many people of different ages, incomes, and backgrounds together to fight for fairness, to fight for each other, to fight for the 99%. And your advocacy couldn't come at a better time, because our democracy is threatened. And it is threatened by one of the worst decisions ever to come out of the Supreme Court, Citizens United. Can you believe the Supreme Court deciding in a 5-4 decision, in the Citizens United decision, that corporations were people who deserve the same speech rights as any American citizen? Well, what happened with that is that it led the way to corporations determining elections and politicians being for sale to the highest bidder. Now, big corporations can spend unlimited amounts of money in secret and without accountability to try to get politicians to answer to them rather than the voters. And boy, did they spend. They showed their stuff in the election of 2010. We were in control of the House. There were numerous Congress members that actually didn't think that they were in trouble, but those with those super PACs were plotting this whole thing all along, having these super PACs plotting to get into those particular Congress members' districts, and then did a whole barrage of TV ads in the last 2 weeks, and that's how they lost their race, and that's how we lost about 70 seats on the Democratic side. In 2010, outside spending on ads was over $15 million, 8 times what it was in 2006 congressional races. And guess what? 72% of that political advertising came from funds that were prohibited from being spent in the previous election. And the 2008 election, the costliest in history. That year, outside groups spent $37 billion on ads. But as of March, this presidential election year, outside spending was a whopping $88 million. Yes, and we just started. Well, what is good for our country? What is good for the people? This is all getting lost in this election. Today, 9 out of 10 congressional races are won by the candidate who raises the most election cash. And if the largest 100 corporations in this country spend just 1% of their profits on electing politicians, they would spend more than all the political parties and all of the federal political action committees combined. And with Citizens United, it's not too hard to imagine that nightmare coming true. So we can't wait. We have to come together and we have to fight this. And that's why we need a constitutional amendment. That's why I am a co-sponsor of Occupied HJ Resolution 90, of course, the constitutional amendment that will ensure that our elections are returned to the American people and that we ban corporate spending in elections and clarify that money spent in elections by corporations is not protected speech. And we have to make sure with that the public gets the idea that corporations are not people and they do not have a right to have endless secret spending in elections. Corporations are not people. People have hearts. People have kids. People have jobs. People get sick. Corporations look out for only one thing, their bottom line. So it's well past time that we take back our democracy and insist on a government by and for all of us, not bought and paid for by Wall Street, big oil, and corporate lobbyists. Together as a coalition, we can turn disillusion into action and grassroots action into power. I tell you, when communities work together, mountains can move.
Yes.
So together, let's make this a country once again for the people and by the people. Let's make sure that this is a nation where everybody can achieve the American dream. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Judy Chu. We appreciate your being here so much, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with